Welcome to this very special edition of the KJ Masterclass Live, the show which ensures that you profit from your time spent here with experts, either through their industry insights, information, or simply learning from them. And today we have Amanda Bennallack and John Broadent. John is a personal development coach and author, and Amanda is also a coach and relationship researcher. Together, they compare notes regarding the pitfalls they were present in their clients' intimate relationships, and now they are on the path of defining what are the fundamental qualities of healthy, fulfilling relationships, and they are helping a lot of people. Welcome to the show, Amanda and John.
Thank you.
Hi, Ajay.
Thanks for having us.
Wonderful. Welcome to the show. Welcome to India in this online form. And I'm sure not just in India, but a lot of people across the globe will benefit from what we are going to discuss right now. We'll be talking about the architecture of healthy, fulfilling relationships. So first, to understand from both of you, Amanda and John, you decide among themselves who would want to answer at what point in time. So first, to understand about your own journey about as a couple, and so that people can learn from your journey and what you learned along the way.
Well, we met later in life after various relationships that we've had through life didn't go the way that we hoped. It was during the early stages of our relationship that we realized that we'd settled for things and lost ourselves in those relationships rather than aiming for what we both wanted. And we attended some training during COVID lockdown, interestingly enough, that really opened our eyes up to the whole concept of what's known as emotional intimacy. We spent 3 days in an online Zoom boot camp, and we learned so much from that it really inspired us to do a bit of a stock take as to what we'd learned together. And out of that, we created Retune as a business to help other couples with their education around how to actually do relationships, because we felt that of all the things that we do in life, actually learning how to have healthy and functional relationships is one of the things that we never actually do.
So true. Yeah.
Right. Amanda, you wanted to add something to it?
I would say, because learning so much about ourselves within our own relationships in the past, we were able to really define and take ownership of our own mistakes and our flaws. But we can always, of course, improve. And that's really what we're at, is personal growth. And relationships are the fertile ground for personal growth. I unfortunately settled in my last relationship and woke up to myself of where I was really letting myself down. The relationship ended amicably. But moving forward, I vowed to myself never to make those same mistakes again. And I was going to take full responsibility for that. And I feel very blessed that I met a very awakened, mature, together man, John. And he supported me on my personal growth. So we hopefully are getting stronger and better, because we put into practice everything that we've learned within, because I studied behavioral psychology. That wakes you up to realizing where you have your gaps, because we definitely have strengths and stretches within ourselves, and we very focused on supporting each other in shortening those stretches, so we actually becoming more whole within ourselves. And our relationship is the proving ground for ourselves, just how well we're actually showing up for ourselves and each other.
And we started talking to other couples around us, Ajay, around what they were finding, and realized that they were also in often struggle street. But there was the facade that they were, in a perfect relationship, but you get behind the scenes of that facade and realize there's no such thing. And so our attempt is really to normalize the fact that relationships are one of the toughest things we do. And therefore, wouldn't we want to know how to do them well? Wouldn't we want to be educated? Wouldn't we want to know best practice on how to actually engage with that? So we're still researching, we're still building, we're still evolving what it is that we do with the couples that we support and educate. And we do that through workshops. We do it through a longer 6-month program, and the results, particularly from that 6-month program, have been outstanding. So we also practice everything that we teach in our own relationship on a daily basis.
Right, absolutely. So I want to understand from you a bit, why do people understand about relationships a bit later on in life? Very few come to know about the intimate part of relationship, the emotional intimacy, and all things good earlier on. Why is it, Amanda and John, both? Is it because we need time for wisdom, or is it something else in life?
Well, essentially, falling in love's easy. And when we're in that phase, we're actually winging it. And we don't realize we're winging it. But it feels good. When we're in flow and we're doing fun things together, we feel like organically there is a growing of moving forwards together. But when you get serious, when you like move in and you've been together for 6, maybe more years, well, then that's when life really starts becoming way more realistic. And the logistics of life start bogging us down, and the familiarities sometimes become a curse. The rose-colored glasses come off, essentially. And we don't realize that we're not listening to understand. We're listening to respond. Because the a bit too common in our disagreements, or what kicks off a problem, is the way we talk to each other. A bit of a snippet, a criticism, a frustration from unmet expectations, and it just snowballs. And before you know it, our partner has come off the pedestal, and we're just drowning in negative sentiment override. Once we gave them the benefit of the doubt, it doesn't happen anymore.
And we find particularly that couples generally come from a low base of self-esteem, and as a result of that feel unworthy or unable to articulate their needs and wants of the relationship. In fact, some of the research that we've done shows that over 70% of couples never ever talk about the quality of their relationship at all. So how can a relationship evolve and grow and improve if we're not discussing whether it's actually working for us or not?
Having uncomfortable personal conversations is possibly the most awkward thing we'll ever do. And because we're avoiding pain, we're avoiding being hurt or even hurting our partners.
Or rejection.
And rejection, very much so. It's those insecurities, our fears, that we're really running away from. So the very vital conversations that we need to be having, we're avoiding. So it becomes, before we know it, a mountain out of a molehill.
Right. So carry on.
Sorry, it's the elephant in the room, or elephants in the room, that couples tend to avoid. And when we do that within the dynamic of a relationship, imagine that the relationship is a garden. It's a third thing, an entity that we co-create. And if we're not going into the garden with our partners and nurturing and tending and nourishing and cherishing that space, then the garden will wilt. And so the garden then gets filled up with elephants that no one wants to discuss. And before you know it, the relationship field, the playing space in which we can cohabitate, is now reduced. And over time, it gets so small that it becomes constrictive, and then no one's needs are being met. And people then think the only way to get that solved is to leave and move into another relationship where the same patterns get created.
Right. So the logistics of life can puncture the balloon of love.
Definitely.
Well, we say, if you imagine, AJ, if you imagine that there's 3 circles, that when we first meet someone, we're trying to establish through dating, through conversations, through working out our likes and dislikes, whether their values aligned, whether there are any red flags or showstoppers. And we start to grow the friendship circle first. Traditionally, then in the West, it would possibly move then into the lovers circle, when we then go into a committed relationship. And then we might want to get married, or we get married and then become parents, and we start building a life together, and then we become partners. So it's really those 3 areas, or those 3 circles of friends, lovers, and partners, is where we start to relate. And over time, the logistics of life massively increases the partner circle, which then swamps out the friendship and the lover circle.
Right. So we thought love is the ideal situation, and that can, and that's why one gets married till death do us apart, and all those things. Then where is this not the concept of soulmate? Where is this soulmate come in? And why can't we let intimacy or emotional intimacy come in when love is very much there? Why is it that love gets all dried up, the lake of love gets dried up, and then we are meandering in the emptiness of life? Help us understand then, how do we tackle this part in life so that love actually turns into intimate relationship, fulfilling, healthy relationship?
Well, the friendship circle, as the logistics of life takes over, the friendship circle starts to shrink, and we don't date, we don't be curious, we don't do all the things.
We don't do fun things together.
We don't do fun things together anymore like we used to. So we don't actually measure or recognize the diminishing of the friendship space. What then happens is, because that's the emotional intimacy space, the physical intimacy space then starts to shrink as well. And as couples, we do measure that, because the large majority of couples know exactly about the quality and quantity of their physical intimacy relationship. And so that becomes the canary in the coal mine, to use that phrase, that things are not well. But instead of then going back and becoming friends again, some couples trying to reverse that order and go back to try and being lovers again, but they're not emotionally connected. So what we have to do is go back around the circle and improve and increase the friendship part of our relationship, so that the lovers part of the relationship naturally evolves like it did in the beginning. And what couples often try to do, which is a mistake, is they try to reconnect and rekindle what they had. But I'm not the same person I was 2 years ago, let alone 20 years ago. So what we teach couples is, how do we go back to the friendship circle, reconnect not as we were, but as we are now, get back into experiences, fun, curiosity, and grow our friendship again, so that the lovers piece can come back in naturally or organically and sit on top of the emotional intimacy, which has now been rebuilt.
Right. So how do I know whether I am in a healthy, fulfilling relationship when I am in love? Because obviously, if you keep on waiting for it to get over, then you will never get the chance to know. So how does one know? Okay, they seem happy, they feel happy, but how do they know whether it's a healthy relationship, it's a fulfilling relationship? Is there some test for it, some litmus test or something?
Very much so, and it comes down to the dynamics. If you're someone who is foregoing your own needs and prioritizing your partner's needs before your own, that eventually will become resentment. And it's not intentional. In fact, it's unconscious. There are people who feel that, well, if I prioritize my partner, they will feel important. Therefore, they do so without this being a conversation, that it will be reciprocal. But time then eventually starts showing that, well, if you keep giving and the other person's like, wow, this is cool. I didn't ask for this, but it's good. I didn't ask, but I'm okay with it. So they don't feel that it needs to be reciprocal, because the person who's giving and giving and giving is doing so without it being of a request or a conversation. But resentment is a very murky thing, like unspoken expectations that fall apart become filled with resentment. And resentment then becomes the underpinning negative feeling that you feel within your relationship, that you don't feel like you matter. I do everything for you, but you do nothing for me. Well, did you ask? So this all comes into communication and actually being aware of yourself. What are you doing and how are you showing up in the relationship? Are you abandoning your own needs and prioritizing the other person with the expectation they will do the same for you? And none of this gets really spoken about. So again, communication is really key. And the only time you really do know you're in a relationship where there's an imbalance is when you start feeling feelings of unfairness, resentment. You start stacking. You start, creating the list of when they let you down.
The laundry list.
The laundry list. When you have an argument, It's not just the one thing that gets spoken about. All of a sudden, the laundry list comes out because you have stacked so many unresolved issues. But the reality of it is those issues have feelings embedded in them. And we don't generally speak about our feelings. We stay on the surface.
And we tend to point the finger. One of the classic phrases is, "You made me feel." And one of the things we teach our couples is, no one can make you feel anything without your consent. Our feelings are our own experience, and we teach couples to change their language to say, when that happened, I felt. And then we take responsibility for our feelings, and then we can communicate that to our partners. And then it's up to our partners then if they wish to moderate or change their behavior towards us, or for us to understand, why did I feel upset or hurt or resentful or criticized in that dialogue. And it's this ability to be more dynamic in our communication and more open and clear in our communication and articulate where we're at and our emotional state with our partners that allows the smoother sailing through what can be sometimes rough waters.
Right, Amanda, right, John. So how should we see men and women? They look at life, they look at relationship and emotions a bit differently than each other. What are your learnings, individual learnings, that you would want to share with others? So that John, you have written your book, Man Unplugged, Exploring the Inner Man. And Amanda, you also have a great deal of experience about life, about relationship, about your experience with your own, family, narcissist abuse, including in the family, your father you talk about. So help us understand then, how should women look at man and relationship as such, and how should man look at relationship from also understanding the women's emotional needs, the way they look at life and love and relationship.
Along those lines, really what it comes down to is we all bring baggage into our relationships. And our baggage is the stories and beliefs and meanings behind the experiences we've actually had in our life. Now, I had a pretty tough dad. And the thing is, between my siblings, is that we all have genuinely our levels of our love for him. And individually, my siblings also have their own genuine experiences of their experience of our father. The lens at which we look through life is uniquely ours. Because at any given time, whether the experience is extremely awesome or it's sadly not so good and it's tragic, we will put a meaning to it. And we will carry whatever meaning we've had from our childhood, and we'll bring our baggage into our adult relationships. Because essentially what we're seeking in our attachment to the partner we're choosing is to solve the unresolved issues that we had from our main caregivers when we were younger. So this is the root of psychology, which is called attachment theory. And it's used profoundly within relationship coaching around the globe. It makes tremendous sense to a lot of people once they find out what their attachment style is. And within that, where their insecurities are driving their behavior and why they do what they do. And why they have conflict in a particular style, the way they do with their partner. Because our attachment style will determine the way we do conflict. And if we're someone who is anxious and we're going to seek, we're going to chase, we're going to want to resolve because we're very wanting to have the connection. We're seeking a connection in a more of a needy way for assurance. But someone who's an avoidant prides themselves of their independence, doesn't feel like they need total connection because they like and value autonomy. So you find if an avoidant and an anxious person in a relationship together, which by the way, AJ, is one of the most common couplings, you'll find that the way that they will do conflict is so normally the same. And what I say is when we explain it to couples, they go, That's our normal.
Have you been in our room, our house, watching our arguments? Because we explain the cycle of how the attachment avoidant and the anxious avoidant argue or do conflict, and it's a very common pattern. And when we explain it, they go, "How did you know?"
Yeah.
Absolutely, John. So in a relationship, we introduce the other as our better half, but actually when there is a tussle, we say I am right. Both sides say both are right. So that actually is not the case when the way you introduce to others and the way you look at it. So how do I know whether the problem is with the other person or actually I am the problem in a relationship?
You need to seek each other's perspectives first. So the rule of thumb is to seek understanding first before you resolve a problem. Because whenever there's a disagreement, that is the perfect example that there are two valid perspectives happening at the same time. So you just need to first unpack what your point of view is, and your partner holds space for you to explain your perspective, and they listen to understand. Ask curious questions for clarity. And when there's
be genuine in it.
It's totally genuine. And there's always feelings embedded in the perspective. So it's to feel validated. And you swap around. So you had your turn, now swap. I'll be the listener. Completely curious and genuine to understand your perspective. That is the optimum way to start in resolving a situation. And you'd be very happily surprised is that you don't have to agree. The point is to come to a clear and understanding of each other's perspectives, validate the genuine, authentic feelings that are there, because that's the essence. We always want to feel heard and understood.
And couples tend to think that it's either or, but it is most often and. And that means we have to be open to the power of influence. We have to be open to the possibility of compromise. And when we deeply understand our partner's perspective and the lens through which they look at life, and, I have to remind myself, Ajay, there are 8 billion lenses on the planet. Why would I want to change someone else's lens when it's their perspective of life? How can I say mine is the only one that's right out of 8 billion? Like, it's just crazy. So when we recognize that we view life in a very specific way, the wonderful thing about conflict in a relationship is it gives us opportunity to get curious and learn more about our partners and how they see the world from within their lens.
So therefore, most people catch themselves fighting to be right. I'd rather be happy.
Absolutely. That's the issue. That's the problem that they can solve within themselves. So how is it that some of the things that the couples can keep in mind that for them to grow together and not just one person grows, the other person resents? How does that work?
Relationships start based on love, but in the longer term, they're not based on love. Relationships are based on trust. When we don't show up for our partners and we don't communicate what we need over time, that trust starts to get eroded. And we know couples that have separated that still love each other, not in love, but love each other, but simply can't live together because the trust between them over time has been eroded.
People think that a betrayal that breaks the relationship needs to be an affair. But 50% of affairs in relationships are overcome. So it depends on how willing you are to actually nurture the relationship and rebuild trust. Because trust can be many simple things: being let down, saying what you're going to do and you don't follow through, being simply forgetting things on a regular basis. But I've told you so many times, kind of thing. So it's like being cut by 1,000 paper cuts. It's like the straw that broke the camel's back. That there's so many disappointments. I don't feel you have my back feeling. It's layer upon layer over years of various types of betrayals, and none of them are about an affair. It's just It's
Right.
feeling that you don't matter in the relationship and that nothing can be resolved. And when you try, feeling shut down and not heard, a broken record. So you feel like you're on this loop going nowhere.
One
How
of the
does
yep.
carry on, John?
One of the phrases that we teach our couples is, if you want your relationship to change, you have to do relationship changing things. You can't keep using the same approach, the same patterns, the same dialogue, the same arguments, and expect it to grow and change. It's not going to happen.
Because who feels nice being criticized? Because the reality of it is, as soon as you drop out of criticism, automatically the other person will come through and defend themselves because they feel like they're under attack. As soon as you go into that process, you are creating a loop in the way that you're going to be now communicating. Realistically, if you could just not criticize and get to the crux of what it is that you're unhappy about, what it is that you want, not what you don't want, but what it is that you want, and be kind and respectful in your communication about it, you'll find you'll circumvent so many issues that potentially won't happen.
Absolutely. Absolutely. There is much to learn from both of you. And so tell us a bit about Retune Life, so that people can know about it, the type of work you do. What are the clients? What are your, clients that they generally ask to you people? And does it ever happen that, if it's a woman client and she speaks something, you agree and he disagrees, and there is a discord at that point in time? I want to understand that whole situation from the ground.
One of the advantages we feel that we have is that we've been doing relationships through most of our lives. I think we've got over 80 years between us, not all of it good. We're not spruiking stuff that doesn't work. We test this in our own relationship every single day.
Plus, it's an eclectic of the best practice from relationship psychologists from around the world.
And we found that
we've distilled the best.
So we have, and simply providing education to couples around, firstly, normalizing that the conflict that they may be having is actually normal, that the disconnection or the lack of closeness to their partner, particularly after 20 years, is also normal. And by teaching them to become more vulnerable, to do some inner work, we have a theory, I guess you could call it, that the quality of our relationship, anybody's relationship, is a direct reflection of the quality of the work they've done on themselves. So people that are reasonably self-aware, that have done some personal development, that have dealt with some of their demons, that have dealt with some of their trauma, if two people of that type come into a relationship, they will have a better relationship. But we see quite a few relationships that aren't working well because the individuals in those relationships aren't at home within themselves.
Wonderful. Wonderful. There is much to learn from you, both of you, and I'm sure a lot of people would like to connect with you, to learn from you, and also take your, help as a client. What's the best way for them to do so?
Well, they can go to our website and do our free 7 Pillars of Intimacy quiz, which will show them where their connection with their partner is or isn't working. From that, we obviously get the results. We reach out to them then to offer them some free support in terms of an initial 20-minute call to see if we can help them resolve some of those sticky problems quite quickly, to give them some quick results. And if they want to move from there, they can come and do one of our longer 6-month courses, which is all done remotely.
Wonderful. Wonderful. With this, it's a wrap on this very special edition of the KJ Masterclass Live. Thank you so much indeed for joining us.
Thank you, Ajay.
Thank you, Ajay.